So what does it mean to be a scrappy company, a scrappy business, or a scrappy startup? That's the subject of today's video. And in fact, this particular topic had a lot of responses yesterday when I had a discussion with my wife, Yeji, on this. And have a listen.
So after, how many percent of the company survive after 10 years?
Oh, okay. Well, she said they fail within 5. We want to try 10. Okay. I have another question for you. For an AI company, how many companies survive past 10 years?
It's really hard to say exactly for AI companies, but the tech world in general sees a lot of turnover. Even big name companies get disrupted or pivot. So for a young company, it's more about being scrappy and ready to adapt.
What does scrappy mean?
Being scrappy means being really resourceful and determined, even when things are tough. It's about finding creative ways to get stuff done without a ton of money or resources.
So scrappy is kind of a funny word.
Yeah.
How to explain it? You don't know this word probably, right? Okay, so how to explain scrappy? Scrappy would be like, scraps would be like small amounts, I guess would be one way to describe it. So you would say like scraps of food. So like the crumbs of food. That's how I interpret. There's different ways you can interpret this. But then the idea would be I take a bunch of little pieces and put it together to make something, right? And so like the way she described it would be like a startup culture to where, another way we say shoestring budget, like my shoestring. It's like a very thin budget, like when we filmed independent movies, right? That kind of world where you put it together. Anyone who's worked in this environment, you'll know it's really hard because.
So it doesn't even give a number.
Yeah.
So that was our discussion from yesterday. I want to go through some of your comments, but I also want to relate to how to understand the world that we live and understand how to communicate with people. I'll tell you this, experience matters a lot. And when you communicate with people, having shared experiences is how you make connections. So in this example, there's an experience that Yeji and I have had. We worked in the film industry together a lot. And you guys may have maybe glossed over that because you don't really know what we're talking about. And so then the context changes. And so essentially I was trying to explain the definition of scrappy in base of our shared experience of working in independent film together, which is basically like a startup. And also too, we've worked in the big industry as well, be it Hollywood or internationally. I bring that into context because sometimes people always say, oh, Chris, what do you know? You're so dumb. People say that kind of stuff a lot. But again, it depends on what experiences that you know and how you see the world. Check out some comments on this topic, and it's actually a fun one. And this is from Scuba Doo, which is kind of interesting that someone named themselves Scuba Doo. And they say, Scrappy is a bit of a fight against the odds. I'm going to have to scrap this Saturday fight. Oh, okay, that's a good one to use it. Scrappy is a more playful version. Scrappy Doo from Scooby-Doo, for instance. Here's another one. Like Scooby-Doo, little dog son Scrappy Doo, he's scrappy, classic leash puller type, right? And so this would be like, you would understand this definition if essentially you've had a dog, or that idea of like sort of the little doggy that pulls, and I guess big dogs pull too, right, on their leash. There's another person, and I'm showing you guys, look at all these different definitions that people come up with. I thought, quote, scrappy meant something like a tough little guy that punches above his weight using their stronger than usual ability to endure an unfavorable circumstance. That's a good way to define it. And then there's Scrappy Doo. This is from the old cartoon. Now for young kids, I don't think young kids would know who Scrappy Doo is. And I don't even know if young kids know who Scooby-Doo is. This is a cartoon that I grew up with. I think it's Hanna-Barbera. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Because I remember they were like a bunch of cartoons that all look kind of the same. and basically they figured out sort of cheaper ways to do animation. They ultimately did a live action version of this, but there was no Scrappy. Some people were disappointed. I remember hearing about that. And then, it's funny, depending on your generation, you either say Gilligan's Island, which was, was it Ginger or Marianne? Is that correct? Yeah, it was the Hollywood star or the girl next door. Or if you're, say older than that, or kind of same generation in, say, for example, Scooby-Doo, are you more for Thelma or Stephanie? You guys can write in the comments which one you like. And for those of you who know the jokes I'm talking about, you get it. But this goes back to shared experiences. And if you want to be successful in this world, and there's different ways to talk about what success means, but in my opinion, learn how to communicate with people, right? And you have shared experiences, and then you can make these kind of jokes, and that's how you make connections. At least that's been my strategy for years. For example, the jokes I just told you with either Scooby-Doo or what was the other one? It's Gilligan's Island. Older people would get what I'm saying. The young people are like, what the F is he talking about, right? And that goes back to sort of why my definition of scrappy was a little bit different and nuanced, because I'm talking to my wife Yeji and we have shared experiences. And this also goes to when I have conversations with y'all in the community. I learn from people every single day. Communicating and how to communicate with people changes depending on the context and who you're talking to. This is Joe. Joe's means scrappy means fight. So a lot of people went with the fight definition of scrappy, but I'm going to show you some more. Scrappy is small but tough. It's used to describe fighters a lot. That's from Big Dreams Boating. I think everyone's watching fighting. Honestly, guys, I don't watch UFC. That's not my thing. But I'm sure if I watched it, there might be a bunch of vocabulary and things that sort of shared experience. Oh, I remember that fight, blah, blah, blah. And, it's kind of like, I watch college football and college basketball, so I kind of know how they talk. They always talk about resumes and Cinderella stories, and yeah, they always use the word parody. I think is the word they use. Like they have a certain vocabulary that all those announcers, they all use the same words all the time. So scrappy, another person says, Patricia, she says savvy, which is kind of interesting. Everyone has different definitions of this. It's fun. That's why it's a funny topic. Thomas Palagy, they say, I think scrappy describes an extraordinary determination to come out on top, perhaps with a willingness to bend the rules a little if necessary. Okay. Here's another one. Getting in a scrap used to be a way to say getting a fight. Being scrappy is being willing to get into fights, particularly if you are smarter than your opponent. And also, too, this is important. If you want to be successful in business, these kind of things, learn to understand others, right? So it's not just you communicating, but you also being able to understand other people and be willing to accept that other people may have a different way of saying things. And that's totally fine. And in fact, it's good to have a company with people who have different ideas that may be different than yours. You'll find that may be stronger. And this also, I know this is a really complicated issue, and it goes to, again, to your experiences, but sometimes people have a lot of frustration if they're like, I just can't believe someone else could think differently than me. I just can't imagine that, right? There's situations where you could have a conversation with someone and you could both disagree, but actually both be right at the same time. That's part of living in the world. And also, to be perfectly frank, that's what it's like to be married. So anyone who's married will know exactly, how about this? Anyone who's successfully married will know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a lot of failed marriages, essentially. You could say that, well, the number one would say maybe money, but two, you could say communication, but they're interrelated, right? Are you hiding money from me? Are you sharing all the money from me? Did you do stuff that you didn't tell me about? Did I misunderstand what you said about money, et cetera, et cetera? And that could be the same for business as well, because a partnership is also a marriage, essentially. But it's fun to hear different people's versions of this. This is Robert. He says, getting in a scrap used to be a way to say getting a fight. Being scrappy is being willing to get into fights, particularly if you're smarter than your opponent. Another way to think about language, communication, is the meaning of words change over time and change by a generation. So, for people, and you guys don't know, I'm 49. When I was a kid, man, that was just totally rad. Nobody says that anymore. Like, do you guys remember this? Totally rad. We all say that. And tubular was a real word. I think awesome has stayed around, and it's the fun of language. Now, some people, and I'm not one of these people, some people are afraid of change, right? And you kind of know which. We'll say you'll know which groups, be it in your family, like which people are afraid of change, or be it, people that you don't like at work are afraid of change. Some people are just completely afraid. Sometimes there's this change. It's just what it is. Things change. Younger generations have a different way of thinking, different way of talking. Some people are afraid of that. And I think one of the things, and actually, I'm going to totally sell my book here. See, there's my book, Positive Angle. I write about this kind of stuff in my book a lot, and I really recommend picking up a copy if you're curious about my point of view on all kinds of things. But I'll put it this way. I was also a professor. I worked in the film industry, but then I was also a professor for many years. And I would have young people come into the classroom semester after semester after semester. I did this for 10 years. And it always kept my mind young, because you're around people who are like, way, way younger than you, and just have a different point of view. They even listen to different music. Gasp, They don't know who Depeche Mode is, And full disclosure, I really liked Depeche Mode when I was in high school. But and today, I think that one of the dudes left, and they're just old, and I like different stuff now. But and I'm bringing in music because it depends on your experiences, right? If you're of my age, you would know what these kind of words mean, these kind of stuff. But if you want to sort of attract a younger a crowd, or be able to communicate with your kids or whatever, you have to learn a different way of thinking. And sometimes it's okay to be different, and you can both be correct, and you can also all get along. But again, I think a lot of this, the societies and things that we have happening and sort of this disconnect among different groups of people, be it USA or whatever, sometimes people don't want change. Me, I'm okay with it. I think change can be okay. Here's someone else, and this person was particularly really aggressive, and it's fun to read this stuff. This person, non sequitur, says at the 10:50 mark, great example of how, quote, American, aka incrapified, I think he'll say, English happens. 1, Americans hear a cool sounding English word. 2, American guesses wrongly what it means. 3, American starts using it because it sounds cool. 4, an American hears and imitates and wrongness spreads. Wow, this guy, I don't know, this could be, and it could be American to hate on America, or it could be someone outside, who knows? So you can ask this person. Non sequitur is the name. The person says here, the problem is that America always skips step 1B, checking the dictionary. And I think this person's trying to make fun of my wife and I in this video. I don't know, but it's pretty aggressive though. I imagine how Americans have AI choosing cool new words for them is going to accelerate B. But by the way, oh, okay, yeah, see, they are making fun of me. By the way, quote, scrappy means very willing to fight. A scrap is a fight. It might well come from fighting over scraps, but it's very does not mean willing to piece scraps together sort of creatively. Okay, so he's saying my definition is wrong. He said does not mean willing to piece scraps together sort of creatively. It's terrifying that a nation with nukes literally no longer understands how to say that they could not care less about something having words that mean things that make sense, being one of those things, ironically. So this person is attacking me, telling me I'm wrong, and basically saying, Chris, you're so dumb. Here's another one. So I want to hear different definitions and different opinions. This is from Pete. Pete says, the upper management of my small but subsidiary of a very large company, Silicon Valley employer, likes to call us scrappy. So you can see this person's experiences are in Silicon Valley. They literally say it, and talk about upper management. It means nimble, which is a very common phrase among startups. You hear it all the time, and quick to react to unexpected problems, but also, unfortunately, also encompasses the Silicon Valley ethos of move fast and break things. Yes. And so again, you can see how when you read through different comments, you can see how people communicate. You can kind of tell people's experiences and sort of where they're coming from. And if they're just in it for the fight to be like, I want to show that I'm right, or they're actually, I want to have an honest and real discussion. Now, my point of view is, and I've said this so many times on the channel, I'm fine having real discussions with people, like an actual discussion. I don't have to win anything. Like, what are we doing? Are we just here to fight all day? No, I'm just here to have a discussion. I like to hear other people's opinions. That's what a discussion is to me. Now, here's actually dictionary definition of scrappy, because I want to show you guys we could all actually be right. Take a look at this. Dictionary, number 1, scrappy. So first you could say it's a comparative adjective, superlative. I don't use these words that often. Superlative or adjective. It could be scrappier or scrappiest. One definition would be consisting of disorganized, untidy, or incomplete parts. So my definition when I was trying to explain my wife, I was thinking in terms of number 1 right here. And the other one, which I didn't say in the video, but it was going through my mind because I remember I said it. I was thinking about when you talk about startups, they always say, if you're going to work for the startups, you're going to have to wear many hats, or, are you willing to many hats? This is the kind of conversations that you would have during an interview for these things. Because for some people, they want their role clearly defined and they want to know what they have to do. And so those kind of people generally aren't good for startups. A startup, it's going to be small. You're not going to have enough people. You're going to have to do all kinds of things, and you're going to have to fix what's broken. And that could be any number of things in your company of 3, 4, 5 people as it grows. And so again, it just goes back to my wife and I, our experiences in film. And literally said, hey, like the stuff we film, we had to put a bunch of cobble stuff together. That was sort of why I was thinking about. But yes, there are definitions for the word scrappy. Again, we can actually all be correct. And this is something that some people, like, they can't handle hearing another opinion that actually could be correct, but just different. And again, this is about, I guess, experience, maturity, and learning to work with others. Here's another definition. So 1 is consisting of disorganized, untidy, and incomplete parts. Here's another definition. Determined, argumentative, or pugnacious, right? So there's actually 2 definitions that can both be right. This one's saying this is informal North American. And then I don't know if the other one is the more precise definition, number 1. I don't know. Because it depends. You're talking about UK or US, I guess, is another dictionary. I just looked it up. UK says badly organized or put together. That's a couple different ways. It gives a couple definitions of I'm afraid your last essay was a very scrappy piece of work. I would never use scrappy in this way. It seems kind of strange. But it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just I don't use it in that way. We were scrappy in the first half and deserve to lose. Interesting, right? So this badly organized or put together. No one really used it in that way when I was looking through all the definitions and see, but it's not wrong. It's just a different way they're using it. Untidy and not very attractive or well developed. So I was thinking more in this terms, like this one, and you guys see, and this would be they live on a scrappy street in the poor part of town, or a patch of scrappy bushes by the front door. Just different ways to use this word. It's just funny. Like, I know, how long can we talk about scrappy? But again, this is all about getting your mind to think in a different way. We can all be right, but disagree, but doesn't necessarily mean we have to fight about it or be scrappy about it, I guess, right? Different points of view do exist in the world, and we can all get along. Here's another one, adjective, determined, okay? And this would be U.S. definition, having a strong, determined character and willing to argue or fight for what you want. A couple examples, a scrappy little kid who won't take no for an answer, or big companies are losing market share to scrappy, smaller operations. And this is sort of another definition. And I just wanted to go through these guys because I think it's like a really good illustration of our internet culture. It's a good illustration of, again, your experience that you've had matter when you communicate with other people. As the more that you hang out in the community, the more you see my videos, etc., you'll get a general sense of who I am, my experiences, these kind of things, and why I talk the way that I do, which may be very, very different than other things that you hear on the internet. And something I always mention, it's very important. Much of the people on YouTube, they're just a bunch of 20-year-old kids with no experience. It's easy to tell. It's very, very easy to tell. But if you're also a 20-year-old kid, you don't know because you don't have any experience either. And it's I'm not what's hard to say it. It doesn't mean that 20-year-old kids have nothing useful to say. It doesn't mean that. They just have different levels of experience and different types of experience. And a lot of people that you'll see on YouTube, if I'm a 16-year-old kid and I've turned on my camera in my bedroom, and that's my whole job, like for my whole life, and you end up becoming Mr. Beast, essentially, you become a very, very different person than if you actually had to go work in a company, had to actually have a boss, and navigate office politics, all these kind of things. It's very, very different. The same way experiences matter in terms of like parental backing, which is a big, big difference. And something I'll just bring up and make it really clear. Whenever I mention this stuff, I say, hey guys, Musk and I went to the same school. Trump went to my school too. Actually, Ivanka was there when I was there. It matters because when I saw money for the first time, I realized, oh my God, there's this whole other world that I didn't even know about. And then when I, also met people of this type of sort who do substances all the time, party all the time, etc., I just realized I didn't really want to be part of that. And for some people, it's hard for them to imagine that not everyone wants to, let's say, hit the white powder all the time. Not everyone wants to do that. And that's just my point of view on these things. Not everyone wants to cheat on their wives and girlfriends all the time. Not everyone wants to do that kind of stuff. But for some people, I guess they idolize that kind of culture. And I just wanted to caution you. And you can make judgments of whether that's right or wrong. I'll let you guys decide. And that's why I say it's different things for different people. And I'm bringing that up because oftentimes people think if you don't run the billion-dollar company and underpay your workers, then you're just a terrible person. But my experiences in business is I go for the long game, right? And I'm not out to cheat as much people as possible. I'm out to build relationships, and so that's sort of where my philosophy comes from. And for me, I was more attracted to the education side opposed to just making money at all cost side. And everyone is different, and you choose what makes sense for you. So I hope you guys understand my point of view on this stuff. Pick up a copy of my book. It's called Positive Angle. Literally, I talk about all these kind of things in my book, and hopefully they're helpful to you. So thanks again, and I'll catch you all in the next video.